The morning sunlight spilled through the cafe windows like a quiet blessing, but for Arlen Ward, a single dad doing everything he could to hold life together, blessings always felt too far away. He had just returned from dropping his daughter Siena at school when he noticed her, the woman in the red sweater, sitting alone at the far end of the cafe. Her shoulders trembling, her hand pressed against her chest, as if holding herself together before she broke apart completely. Something about her pain pulled him almost physically, as though the universe had placed her in his path for a reason he didn't yet understand. If you believe kindness and second chances can change someone's life, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heartbeat Tales before the story continues. Arlen sat at the table beside her, intending only to sip his lukewarm coffee and return to his shift at the mechanic shop. But her silent tears made it impossible to look away. She wasn't crying loudly, her heartbreak was quiet, elegant, the kind that came from someone who had held it in far too long. Her name, he later learned, was Mara Elowen. At that moment she looked nothing like someone with wealth or status. Her hands shook as she reached for her cup, and when she failed to steady it, Arlen instinctively placed his hand over hers, grounding her without a word. She looked up, startled. Her eyes red but striking a mixture of exhaustion, fear, and something he recognized in himself, the weight of trying to survive. Arlen had spent 3 years raising Siena alone after losing his wife to a sudden illness. He worked double shifts, slept little, and still felt he was never enough. Yet when he looked at Mara, it was as if her quiet suffering dwarfed his own. She breathed out slowly and whispered, barely audible, that she had lost everything in a matter of days. A betrayal from someone she trusted, a business collapse, lawyers circling like vultures. She didn't go into details, and Arlen didn't ask. Pain didn't need a biography to be real. Sometimes it just needed a witness. The cafe was bright and full of weekday chatter, but around Mara there was a stillness, as though she existed in a different atmosphere. Arlen couldn't explain what made him stay, what made him push back his shift, what made him ask if she needed help. She laughed softly, humorlessly, telling him she didn't deserve help, not after the mistakes she'd made. But Arlen, who had once believed the same about himself, gently insisted that mistakes didn't erase a person's worth. He talked about Siena, about how being a parent came with storms, sacrifices, and doubts that consumed entire nights. Mara listened like someone starving for honesty. Over the next week, she kept returning to the cafe, always at the same hour. And somehow Arlen found himself there too. Daytime sunlight became their shared companion. Mara opened up slowly, speaking about her life with careful fragments. She confessed that she wasn't supposed to be here alone, unnoticed, stripped of the world she'd built. Arlen didn't push her for more. He had learned long ago that trust was not something demanded, it was something earned. Siena grew fond of Mara as well. One afternoon, while joining her father at the cafe, Siena pointed innocently at Mara's trembling hand and asked if she needed a friend. Mara's eyes filled instantly, but she smiled, squeezing the little girl's fingers. It was the first time Arlen had seen her truly smile, and it felt like watching winter melt. But everything changed one Wednesday morning when a convoy of black cars pulled up outside the cafe. Men in suits stepped out, scanning the area with urgency. Arlen felt his chest pull tight. Mara's face drained of color. She whispered, "They found me." Before he could ask what she meant, a tall, polished man entered the cafe and addressed her with a mix of relief and reprimand. He called her Miss Elowen and said the board was panicking, the press was restless, and her estate staff had been searching for her for days. Arlen froze. Estate? Board? He looked at her, stunned, and Mara lowered her gaze in quiet shame. She finally confessed she was the sole heir to a multinational enterprise worth billions. The betrayal she spoke of wasn't just personal, it was financial warfare. She had fled everything because she couldn't breathe under the weight of being powerful but utterly alone. Arlen didn't know what to say. He felt foolish for thinking they belonged in the same world. But Mara reached for his hand, a gentle, desperate grip, and told him that he was the first person who'd spoken to her without wanting something in return. The first person who saw her as human rather than a headline. Her security team urged her to leave, but before stepping out, Mara turned back to Arlen and Siena. She told them she wasn't disappearing again, that she wanted to stay connected, to keep the peace she found in that little cafe, to return the kindness that saved her on the day she was falling apart. Arlen believed her, not because of her wealth, but because for the first time since losing his wife, he saw a future where hope didn't feel like a distant luxury. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heartbeat Tales. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories to life.